All right, welcome back. We are doing lesson 9 of unit 3. In this lesson, we are going to do a lab. So you can do parts of it at home if you're at home or not in the classroom, but the lab portion you will have to be in class for. So just be aware of that coming in. All right, and we're going to look at how genes interact with the environment to affect who gets cancer. So we're going to look at some different environmental factors that change cancer risk. Okay, so in this lesson, we're figuring out that UV radiation affects the structure of DNA and the function of proteins. We should be able to, by the end of the lesson, explain how genes interact with the environment to affect who gets cancer, what UV radiation does to cells, what melanin does, and how different levels of melanin impact cancer rates. Okay, and these are the same as your progress tracker questions. Again, just reminding you of that. All right, so we're going to start and look at this graphic that I have here for you on the screen. And you're going to pause when I tell you to do so and talk to your group members about this question here. So why do you think there are high rates of specific kinds of cancer in certain countries? So look at these, and I just want you to brainstorm. You're not writing anything down. You're just discussing with each other right now why you think the UK has highest incidence: lung cancer, Japan stomach cancer, China liver, Australia skin, US colon, Canada leukemia, which is blood, and Brazil cervical. Okay, so just what are some ideas that you're thinking that would help explain those? The US with colon cancer, my thought process would be something to do with our diet. Maybe it's all the McDonald's we eat, maybe it's Taco Bell. So maybe it's some lifestyle choices that are causing us to have higher colon cancer. And then Australia skin cancer, maybe it's because they're closer to the sun or they're always outside and they're crazy chasing kangaroos. I don't know. China liver cancer, maybe there's high alcohol levels in China, right? Those are some ideas. And it's not important necessarily that you know why, right? I'm not asking you to Google this and come up with the answers. You don't have to have the answers. It's just brainstorming with your table partners about why you think those are the highest incidence cancers in those different locations. So go ahead and pause the video, discuss that with your group. Hopefully have a good conversation about some of the things you're observing in that graphic, and then come back when you're done. Sweet. Okay. So we're going to talk about risk factors for cancer. So in most cases, doctors don't know definitively why one person develops a cancer and another does not. We do know research-based risk factors that do increase the chance that a person develops a cancer. So anytime we talk about increased risk factor, I'm not saying like, oh, if you do this thing, you are definitely going to get cancer. It's a guarantee. No, it's saying that there's a higher statistical chance that I develop cancer if I am associated with these different risk factors. So it just increases the chance statistically that I am diagnosed with cancer in my lifetime. So just throwing that out there, not a guarantee that you will or won't get cancer. Same thing, like if you don't do any of these risk factors, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll never get cancer. Okay, cool. So we have three main types of risk factors that we discuss. We have behavioral risk factors, which are associated with behaviors that we do that we know increases cancer risk, such as smoking. Okay, that's a choice that we make. That's a behavior that we do that increases my cancer risk. There's also environmental risk factors that are like toxins or other things in surrounding environment that increase your cancer risk. Examples are radon and asbestos, which are things that can be found in your home or in different buildings, depending on when they were built and where they were built, that we know increases cancer risk. Okay, environmental is a little bit harder to change than behavioral. Behavioral risk factors, it's like, well, you can stop doing the behavior. Environmental, like, it's not, everyone can't afford to just move their house, to renovate their house because it has asbestos, or to move from a location that is, right next to an Amazon warehouse that's pumping out toxic fumes all day or something like that. So environmental is harder to address than behavioral. And then genetic is impossible to address. There's no way to change your genes. Your genes are what they are. Your parents are who they are, and there's no going back from that. But genetic risk factors are factors determined by your genes or your DNA and are inherited from your parents. Some of these things include sex, race, and whether or not you've inherited genes related to different cancers, right? Like we talked about in lesson 8, looking at the pedigrees. If I inherit the gene that doesn't code for the appropriate P53 protein, then that came from my parents. That's in my DNA. There's nothing I can do to change that. So, Okay, so now what you're going to do is on your lesson 9 activity sheet, there is a table that you're going to fill out where with a partner, you're going to go through the activity and disease pairs and decide whether you believe there's an association between them. So whether or not you think that those two things are related or not. Okay. So you're going to start and you're going to pick one and you're going to decide if you believe an association leads to the development of the disease or prevents the development of the disease. And if you decide that there is an association between the activity and the disease, you need to identify the risk as behavioral, environmental, or genetic. So our example, the first one, we have smoking and lung cancer. So my activity is smoking, my disease is lung cancer. I need to choose with my partner or my table members if I think that smoking increases the risk of lung cancer, if it decreases the risk of lung cancer, or if they have no relationship. Smoking does not increase or decrease my risk. It's completely unrelated. Those are my three options. Then if I choose increased risk, so I'm going to say smoking increases my cancer risk, then I'm going to say that smoking is a behavioral risk factor because smoking is a choice that I make every day, a behavior that I have that I'm consciously deciding to do. So it would be a behavioral risk factor. Okay. You're going to go through on your student handout, and that is the wrong document. And you're going to, let me get the right one pulled up for you. And you're going to fill in the rest of this table here. So you can see we have cell phone use and brain cancer. That's our next one. So you and your table members are going to say, I think that increases risk. So you're going to put an X in that box. Okay, then you're going to come over here and you're going to say, I think that that is a behavioral risk factor because I'm choosing to use a cell phone. Sweet. Okay. Or you're going to say, no, that doesn't. It actually decreases my risk because I'm using my brain more when I'm on my phone. So no, decreases risk, and then you don't need to do this. Or I'm going to say, no relationship. Those aren't related. You're crazy. A cell phone is a cell phone. How does that give me brain cancer? And then you also don't need to do this one. Okay, and there's some really cool ones in here. We have sexual activity and cervical cancer, high antioxidants in colon cancer, antiperspirants in breast cancer, exercise in colon cancer, sunscreen use in skin cancer, old age in prostate, red meat and gastric cancer, pomegranate juice and prostate cancer, artificial sweeteners and bladder cancer. Okay, just to clarify some terms on here for you guys. Cervical cancer is a female reproductive organ. Okay, when we're talking about antiperspirants, that's like deodorant. Colon cancer, remember, colon is like your large intestine. It's part of your digestive tract. Prostate is a male reproductive organ. And then gastric cancer is any cancer related to your stomach or digestive system. And then back to prostate. And then bladder cancer, obviously. Perfect. Okay, so we're just going to look through those and kind of, this is just what you think, right? You don't need to Google if these are actually there. If you would like to, because you're curious, I think that's an interesting research thing. Just make sure you're using a good source, right? Not just whatever random people on Instagram say or TikTok. So make sure it's a backed scientific source, right? But they would be some fun things to research in your free time if you're a head pace or something and you're interested. If cell phone use actually causes brain cancer, that'd be really cool to research and get more information on. But you don't need to do that. All I need you to do is it's like a survey of your feelings on this. So you just with your table members say, no, I don't think that increases risk. No, I don't think that increases risk. No, I don't think that increases risk. Yes, that obviously increases risk. Right now, I don't know if any of those, if that's what you would think. So just go ahead and that's just your ideas with your group members, not looking for correct answers necessarily. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and fill in that table and then come back to me when you're done. All right, welcome back. The next thing we have is a cancer stat facts reading, and it's actually a website, not just a reading. As you look through this website, you're going to record things you notice and wonder, and then answer related questions after that. So if I click on this, you can see it's actually a nice website from National Cancer Institute. We're going to try to stay on this page that we're on. You can venture off and do other things on here if you'd like to. It's a really cool website. But for right now, we're just looking at these statistics at a glance. So we want to stay on this kind of area. And this is going to give you cancer statistics at a glance. Okay, and this is updated as of 2024. Those are our estimated new cases, estimated deaths, the percent of all cancer deaths, and yeah, so lots of good information. You can click through all of this, look at it as much as you want, do as much delving into this as you would like to, and notice and wonder all the things that you can. I would say just spend a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes on here, focusing on this main page, the things you notice and wonder. But if you would like to, spend more time on it, then you can. Just make sure you're using your time wisely and that you will still be able to accomplish the assignment. But you can spend some time there writing down things you notice and wonder, and then answering these questions here. So we got our notice and wonder, and then those are actually the only questions that we have, just the notice and wonder, and then come back. All right, so I want to delve a little bit more into some of that skin cancer data that was on that website. The first thing, you can see melanoma, which is skin cancer, is number 5 in common types of cancer. It's got 97,000 new cases in 2023 and almost 8,000 cancer deaths in 2023. And it makes up about 5% of all new cancers in the United States. I also like this one, rate of new cases per 100,000 people by race, ethnicity, and sex for melanoma. So you can see men across all races have a higher percentage than females by about 10 percentage points. Then we can see Hispanic people in both sexes have about 4.5%. American Indian / Alaska Native around 8%. Asian Pacific Islanders around 1%. Black people around 1%. And then non-Hispanic white people 37.9 in men, 25.2 in women. So on that notice and wonder chart, I think a big thing that should kind of be sparking your interest is why is this number for white people so much higher than everyone else? You could also say, why do males have it higher than females? Why do all of these groups have such a low rate? Why is American Indian / Alaska Native the second highest and not Hispanic or Black or Asian? I think those are all great things to put in your wonder side of your notice and wonder chart. All right, and then this is showing percent of new cases by age group. Okay, so we've got a nice bar graph for age group. You can see the distribution, the highest bar is 65 to 74, which is also where our median would be. So median age at diagnosis means that 50% of people are under the age of 66, 50% are over the age of 66. So median different than average, right? Average would be the average of all the numbers. You add them all up, divide by the total, get your average. Median is just say this is the midline. So half of people are older, half of people are younger, and our median is 66. Cool. All right, so we've got another cancer survivor story. This one comes from Michael. He was 25 years old when he was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma, or skin cancer. I need you to watch the video, and as you're watching it with your group members, focus on what his risk factors were. What were some of the things that put him at risk of melanoma? And then when you identify those risk factors, you're also going to think about, were those environmental, were those behavioral, were those genetic risk factors that he had for developing melanoma. So if you click on the link, it will take you to YouTube to watch that. We're not going to watch it together. You're welcome. Right now, pause the video here, open up that YouTube video, watch that, and then record your answers for, I just need to close this tab, for this question here. Okay. So now that we've watched Michael's cancer story and identified hopefully his risk factors, and if they were behavioral, genetic, or environmental, we're going to look at early detection of melanoma, just because I think this is a good thing for you guys to be exposed to and to share with friends and family members, so that you can easily and early identify melanoma, because a lot of us have, like sores or freckles or things that pop up on our skin, and we're not quite sure if they're normal or if they're not, and if we should get them checked out. So this is just a nice graphic to help you kind of identify if something looks possibly cancerous or not. So the American Dermatology Office advises using the ABCDE method, which means that when you're looking at like a freckle or a new sore or a new mole or whatever, you look first for if it is symmetrical or not. So symmetrical means I divide it in half And the left side looks about the same as the right side. So you can see that this one is symmetrical. This one down here is not. The left side does not match the right side. So that puts it in a risk factor, something you should go get checked out. Border, does it have a smooth border? You can see this one is very smooth, very defined. This one is not, kind of looks like a paint splotch or an oil splotch. Color, is it all one color or is it multicolored? Diameter, it should be smaller than a pencil eraser. If it's larger than that, it is worrisome. And then evolution, if it's been changing or evolving, or if it starts changing or evolving. So if you have, like I've had these 3 spots for the past 5 years, okay, that's fine. But then if they start changing or new ones start appearing, then that is a risk factor that's concerning. Okay, so just some things to help keep you and your family members safe and to look out for if you're having new things pop up on your skin, when to go get them checked out. Okay, now talking about our lab investigation. So we're going to investigate how UV radiation causes mutations in DNA, which can lead to a cancer cell. Okay, so we hopefully know that the more UV radiation I'm exposed to, the higher the chance of a DNA mutation. A simple way to reduce risk for developing skin cancer is to protect your skin from harmful UV rays using sunscreen. Okay, so sunscreen just filters out harmful ultraviolet rays from the sun and prevents DNA damage. You can also use different fabrics to accomplish that. It doesn't always have to be like a sunscreen lotion. Okay. In the lab, we are going to investigate using UV-sensitive paper to look at the effectiveness of different strengths of sunscreens and different fabrics to help see how we can prevent DNA damage from UV light. All right, so we're going to go through the procedure for the lab first, and then I'm going to talk to you about our independent and dependent variable, and then I will let you go and do the lab. So you're going to start by getting one piece of photosensitive paper from me at the teacher station and one plastic sheet protector. And then you get to pick 2 sunscreens or fabrics, and every group needs a small piece of foil. So every group needs a photosensitive paper, a plastic sheet protector, and then a piece of foil. And then you get to pick out of the sunscreens I have available / fabrics I have available which ones you want to use. It also might depend on which one is available if there's multiple groups doing this at the same time. All right, then you're going to put your paper together as is shown on the screen there. Okay, so we'll see, I'll put the foil in the left-hand corner. I'll put a sunscreen here in the right-hand corner. I'll put another sunscreen or fabric in this bottom right-hand corner. And then the bottom left-hand corner will be left blank. That is our control. That is how we can reference to tell if our photosensitive paper has been exposed to enough UV radiation. Okay. Then once your paper is set up like this, you're going to take it outside. Hopefully it's a sunny day when you're doing this, and let it sit in the sunlight until the bottom uncovered section. So until this section changes, it will go from a darker blue to a light blue / white. Once that changes color, that tells me that the rest of the paper has been exposed to enough UV radiation for my test to be done. I can take it back inside and I can take the different sunscreens / coverings off and see which one's protected best. Okay, so before you stop and conduct the lab, we're going to talk about this dependent and independent variable. So remember, dependent variable is what you're measuring to collect evidence to answer your question. So thinking back to that lab setup we just talked about, when I take all the sunscreens off, what am I going to be looking for to measure the effectiveness of the sunscreens? So it's going to be something to do with the color of the paper, and then what are you kind of expecting to see from the color of the paper? And then what variable are we going to change? So what are you changing in each of those squares? That is your independent variable. So in square 1, we're doing this. In square 2, we're doing this. In square 3, we're doing this. So what am I changing in all those different squares? That would be our independent variable. Okay. So once you have all of those written down, you got your paper set up, you're ready to go, you can go ahead and conduct that investigation and then answer your analysis questions here. You've got 2 of them about the results, and then come back to the video when you're done. All right, so after we've conducted that lab and seen which sunscreens kind of work best and protect my cells from the UV radiation best, we're going to read more about what UV radiation does to our skin and our DNA to cause skin cancer. So we've got a short 1-page reading here. It's going to go through what UV radiation does to my skin, how it changes that, what it does to my DNA and what it could potentially do to P53, and then a natural mechanism that humans have built in that works very similar to the sunscreens that we looked at. And that'll be that section there. As you read this, we're going to answer these questions. How does UV radiation affect DNA? How could radiation affect the structure and function of the P53 protein? And how does melanin protect us? So I would be looking for answers to these questions as I'm reading. That way you don't have to try to remember when you're done reading all at once. So go ahead and read that and look at those questions. Jot down some answers as you read with your group. All right, once you've got that done and you've read through it with your group, we're going to come back and discuss some of these questions. So from the reading, how is UV radiation affecting my DNA? So what does UV radiation actually do to my DNA, and why is that concerning? Okay, so as you read through the reading, you should have found some things identifying what exactly those harmful UV rays are doing to the chemical structure of my DNA and why that can cause problems down the line. How could UV radiation affect the structure and function of the P53 protein? So now building on that, we know UV radiation affects my DNA. We know it damages my DNA. Okay, we know how specifically it does that. But now when I damage or change my DNA, how is that going to affect the proteins that we know my DNA makes when we think back to gene expression, right? The process of taking my DNA and reading it and making a protein. Well, now if I change that DNA, how is that going to affect the structure and function of my P53? Could it potentially make a different P53, like P53B or C, which is now not going to do its job and not help protect me from cancer? Okay. And then the last one, how does that natural protective barrier we talked about, melanin, help protect us from UV radiation? So what does having higher melanin in my skin do to protect me from radiation? And it's very similar to what sunscreens and fabrics do, but it's built in to us. And then how does that help explain why, white people are getting cancer more frequently than Black people and Native Americans and Hispanic people? So go ahead and pause the video, discuss those questions with your group, look back at that reading. If some of them seem unfamiliar, if you can't figure them out, if you're still struggling, then go ahead and discuss them with me in our small group. All right, and then the last thing, our building understandings. We figured out some huge ideas about the process of making proteins and how that can be affected by UV radiation. So how does our model or our lab help explain? Well, this is not from this lesson. Let's skip that. And that's actually it. So the last one is from lesson 8. I'll delete that out of those slides before I share them with you. So in lesson 9, we looked at how genes interact with the environment to affect who gets cancer. We should have figured out what UV radiation does to cells and DNA, what melanin does, and how different levels of melanin impact cancer rates. So make sure you answer those for me. Show me your progress tracker for your mastery check. I have a couple questions for you, and then you'll be done. Great job. Have a great day.